So I had some interesting things to talk about this time. As I'm sure most of you saw, I have, as you saw from the thumbnail, I intend to piss a lot of people off. This is a subject that I don't really get into at all on my YouTube channel. This is something I would never do on my main channel. But you know what? This is my podcast. Fuck it. I can do what I want on my podcast. So I was watching this debate between Richard Carrier and Sargon of Akkad. And it was super fascinating to watch. I made some notes. So the first part I wanted to look at, let's just watch like the first few seconds of this video, see what Richard Carrier has to say. This is kind of the opening of the debate. They're kind of presenting their own feelings on this. The subject of the debate is, where should social justice intersect with atheism, I think, or something like that, okay? So let's give this a watch and see what Richard Carrier has to say as his kind of opening statements.
If we do evidence-based reasoning, we find that there are these discriminatory realities. And they might not always be as extreme as some people say, or they might not be all the cases, but you're going to find a lot of evidence of it in a variety of different ways. And this isn't the only thing we should care about. I'm just saying that we're talking about social justice, so it's just one category of things that we can care about in terms of making the world better. It's not everything. But that's my take on where atheism and social justice meet. Now the question becomes, how critical, how evidence-based do we get? How hypocritical are we not in dealing with it? And so I think that is a valid debate about that. But I don't think like chucking the whole thing is a good idea.
Okay. So this is what Richard Carrier had to say about it. He's basically saying we shouldn't throw out all of social justice because social justice is basically a fact of reality. Okay, so we know that there's bias in societies. It's not about the U.S. It's not about European countries. It's not like that. It's just there's bias in society, period. That's just how it is, right? So social justice is the idea that we want to deal with those biases. That's what he's saying. Now, there are extremists. There are extremist social justice warriors, quote unquote, SJWs, who are trying to cause problems and doing things in a very ass-backwards way. They're trying to deplatform. They're trying to censor, all of these other ugly things that are not productive. They're harmful. And they're giving it, the movement a bad name, things like that. But he's saying, Richard Carrier here, he's saying we shouldn't throw out all of social justice based on those few extremists. We should criticize those extremists, criticize that extremism, and work from there. Because, social justice is just a fact. Like, there are inequalities and biases in society. That's a fact. Now, how you deal with those inequalities, that's another subject we can talk about. But let's continue on and see what Sargon has to say.
Okay, well, I think that the intersection between atheism and social justice is the same as the intersection between social justice and any other community that can possibly exist.
Okay, Richard Carrier is being, as far as I can tell, being a super chill dude, giving his honest opinion on things, being real relaxed and cool and ready to chit-chat about this. Now let's see what Sargon says.
It is an outright car crash, and everyone hates it, and they want you to go away. Right?
He's almost inciting, he's almost getting the crowd riled up, getting the crowd on his side and getting them wound up and upset almost.
And I'll tell you exactly why, too. Because you're sat there going, well, I think we should be compassionate. Well, you can't make compassion compulsion. You can't.
Okay, you can't make compassion compulsion. That's an interesting point. I'm going to get to that in a minute. For the moment, I'm going to move on and just skip to 232 because that you can't make compassion compulsion. That's part of Sargon's ideology, and I want to talk about that ideology and what it means and how he came to it, and how he even got famous with it in a minute. But like I said, this is an extremely detailed topic that I really enjoy looking into. I just don't feel like I can on my main channel, so I wanted to do it here. Okay, so this next part is Sargon kind of championing this idea. It's kind of dipping his toes into race realism, which is this whole thing where, you know what, let's just be real. And then you say something like ridiculously racist and just toss out any reasons or any reasonable explanations for the things that you're about to say. Let's just hear what he has to say and go from there.
Poverty. So if you have a community where they have something like 72% single-parent households, that's a crime factory.
Okay. If you have a neighborhood that has like 72% single-parent households, that's a crime factory. Here's his claim. He's saying that single-parent households, black fathers are not around for their children, and as a result of that, the black community is a train wreck, and it's just pumping out criminals. That is what Sargon is saying, and he thinks he's being real, quote unquote. He thinks that this is him being real, and that the social justice warriors are shutting him down for saying that. In reality, that might be a factor. Like, you know, fathers not being there for children or something. I don't even know. I don't even know if the statistics he's citing are correct. But that is one thing I can say with certainty. That is not the entirety of the problem. He is simplifying it to practically nothing. And it's almost like dog whistling. Like he's saying something that he knows is going to appeal to his fan base, appeal to these people who just want to keep it real and be racist. You know, it's just ridiculous. Let's continue listening.
I agree. That's a problem.
Yes, it's amazing.
Okay, if that is a problem, if that is part of the problem where fathers aren't around for their children, that's something that we should address. Richard Carrier's right, Sargon's right. But I guarantee you that's not the only thing. And if it is a massive factor in reality, we need to find a way to address it, not blame, not get on these people and say, stop fucking up, get it together, and stop being fuck-ups in general. We need to find a way to rise people out of poverty, rise them out of these situations, because they're in the situation. Let's figure out how to make it better for everybody instead of blaming people.
Problem.
Yeah.
But racism didn't cause that.
Racism didn't cause that. That's what Sargon is saying. Racism did not cause these issues. He's trying to shirk the blame for the disparity between African Americans and whites generally. He's trying to shirk it off onto anything except for racism. He's trying to find some excuse for it that does not involve racism, where in reality, there are people alive today whose grandparents were slaves. There are people alive today who were forced to be segregated from whites. People act like, oh, this was hundreds of years ago. It really was not that long ago in terms of generations. Just look at things. It really wasn't that long ago. There are people who have been heavily affected by this in their lifetimes. Jim Crow laws and everything else. This is not ancient history. Really. It's really not.
And let's just assume that's the case in every case, and it's not. But let's assume that it is. Now we're back to the issue of social justice, poverty, and child care, right?
Okay, wait, pause there. Because
Yeah.
the people who then say, oh, this is a problem, think that racism caused that.
Wait. Oh, caused which problem now? You got me confused.
The poverty and crime.
It's a contributing factor.
I don't know if we know that.
I don't think people say that it's...
If anything, it seems that racism was a causal factor in reducing the crime and poverty in the black community.
Boom. Racism was a key component in reducing poverty in the black community. Let me rewind that and hear that again. This is just dog whistling. This is just him saying things that are going to appeal to his base. This is race realism right here. This is like... This pisses me off so much.
The poverty and crime.
It's a contributing factor.
It's a contributing
I don't know
factor.
if we know that.
I don't think people say that it's...
If anything, it seems that racism was a causal factor in reducing the crime and poverty in the black community.
So he's doing a complete reversal now. He's not just... Not only is he not trying to improve the situation, it's like he's reverting, he's regressing on a solution. It's ridiculous. All right, let me look at another part of this. All right, let me skip forward to... I'm going to just skip right past the part where Sargon is a complete dick for no reason and talks about how Richard Carrier has like 5,000 subscribers and Sargon has 850,000. Just going to skip past it because who cares? Sargon is an idiot who thinks that subscribers mean something for some stupid reason. Not even going to bother getting into it. Let's listen to this part here. Starts at 5:33.
You're having an impact. Let's assume I could do it. Let's assume that somehow I had a magic wand that it could make social justice, like all of the actual social justice activism that's actually getting things done and is not doing the bullshit that you're talking about, doesn't endorse that ideology, and make that spread like a virus to everyone so that you get rid of all social justice extremists and you just have the social justice I'm talking about.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically, Sargon could wave a magic wand and get rid of all the extremists, which are a problem. They exist. We need to get rid of them. Let's say we could do that and we could keep good social justice. We could keep productive, progressive things that are actually helping people. Would he do it?
Would you approve that? Would you think that would be a better
Probably
world?
not. I still would think you're procedurally incorrect. I mean, you're busy collectivizing people on race, gender, sexuality, blah, 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 blah.
So you
and that's
still,
anti-individualism.
You still reject the idea.
Okay. Anti-individualism. That's what Sargon said. A minute ago, remember I was talking about his ideology behind this. His ideology is basically individualism versus collectivism, quote unquote. He's super anti, like, identity politics and things like that. What it comes down to basically is every individual person is to blame for their individual decisions. He's ignoring the fact that we can look at statistics and we can see social phenomena taking place and we can get an explanation for why this thing is happening. We can understand why the majority of this demographic of people are making this choice for the most part. And we can reverse that. We can fix that problem and rise that demographic up out of poverty or out of the issue that they're having. He calls himself a classical liberal, which is basically individual versus group. Individual freedom versus group freedom, or group justice, basically. It's individual freedom versus group justice. If he wants to be racist and discriminate against somebody in his hiring practices, like if he doesn't want to hire black people, then he feels that he shouldn't have to. He should be able to discriminate against them if he wants. That is his philosophy. I mean, that's what Sargon's philosophy is. He has just straight up said that before.
Ideology of intersectionality.
Yeah, no, he's talking about some really...
Intersectionality is not an ideology. I mean, there are people who call themselves intersectional feminists, and they have their own ideology. That's harmful. But intersectionality is just it's a social phenomena where you can look and see you have a black person and they're also female, and they have these different biases affecting them as a result of having those two qualities about them. So intersectionalism is looking at how they are affected by those qualities, basically, by the biases as a result of those qualities.
But a really obscure, sort of elaborate, bizarre...
And you can just you can do research papers on it and stuff. I mean, that's the idea behind intersectionalism. It's not an ideology. It's just a fact of social systems.
Ideology.
Obscure.
Well, yeah,
it's not obscure.
It's widespread. I'll give you that.
It's in my government.
I misspoke
it's in
on that.
your...
Okay, now, all right. So he says, Richard Carrier basically said, intersectionalism isn't an ideology. The ideology is this kind of weird, obscure thing that you're talking about. And Sargon just disintegrates, saying it's not obscure, it's a big thing.
You're talking about a really obscure, sort of elaborate,
Obscure.
bizarre ideology.
Obscure.
Well, okay, I'll
It's
give
not
you,
obscure.
It's widespread. I'll give you that.
It's
yeah.
in my government.
I misspoke
It's in
on that.
your government. It's in every university. It is everywhere. They have their own institutions within the universities to propagate diversity. It's like a religion. They have a priestly class.
What's an
they have
example-
activists and proselytes. They have blasphemy laws.
In the U.S.
Yes.
No.
Okay, maybe not the laws in the US, but that's only because you have a First Amendment in every.
No to all of that. What the fuck is this guy talking about? This is complete bullshit, top to bottom. There's no reality in anything that Sargon is saying right now. Look, the extremists are an issue. I do not agree with deplatforming. In fact, I did do a video on deplatforming on my main channel recently. I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in deplatforming. I don't believe in shunning and all kinds of other things like that. But this is ridiculous. This guy is just, he kills me. All right, look, I'm going to stop there for the moment. Actually, there's one more thing I want to address. It's at 8 minutes and 1 second. It's actually an extremely important piece of this. Let me listen to this real quick.
Because most people are very sensitive to kind of social shaming, and it really, I mean, it's...
Okay, social shaming. That is something that SJWs do, and it is an issue. Social shaming is not acceptable in my eyes. Or social shunning, I'm sorry. Specifically shunning. Or disconnecting from people for their beliefs. I do not accept that as an option.
It takes a lot to push a person to the point where they say, I don't care what my peer group thinks. I mean, that is a hell of a thing to do.
Are we getting there?
Yes, I think so. I think we're definitely on our way. But I mean, like, you know, mockery is a great, you know, it's always the great leveler. For anyone who comes along and seeks to declare how you have to live your life, if you have the freedom to mock them and they're mockable, you should probably do it.
No, you shouldn't. Mocking is not helpful. Mocking is not the best way to do things. What the fuck is he talking about? Why is he advocating mocking people? That is not helpful. That doesn't help anybody. That makes them put their guard up and completely shut down. From that moment on, they're not going to listen to what you have to say. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer productive. And everybody's going to see you as the piece of shit that you are for mocking people. You should not mock people. That is what I've built my entire YouTube channel off of. Do not mock people. Don't harass or bully or mistreat people, like Jehovah's Witnesses who come to your door. Don't release dogs on them. Don't do that shit. That's not okay. Sargon is the kind of person I would expect to release dogs on children, based on the things that I've heard him say just in the past 5 minutes. Anyway, something else I wanted to address. Okay, so this was the anti-SJW side. This shit pisses me off a lot. All right, so we've addressed the anti-SJW side. I wanted to take a look at the SJW side. So there are some people, Steve Shive's famous SJW, and some others. Dusty Smith, you know, Cult of Dusty, he's been getting into like kind of some SJW stuff a little bit lately. And it's been a little bit concerning to me. I believe in social justice. Look, there are biases in society, and I hope to correct those biases. But I don't believe in doing it in crooked ways. I don't believe in discriminating against other people, other demographics, in favor of one that I'm trying to rise up. I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in deplatforming, those types of things. It's extremist, black and white, us versus them, in-group, out-group thinking. So let's just take a quick glance, take a gander through Dusty Smith's Twitter feed and see what he has to say. The reason you shouldn't be friends with shitheads is because it's important to make them pay a social penalty for being shitheads. By continuing being friends with them, you don't make them pay this penalty, and thus they believe their actions are acceptable. Peer pressure works. No, that is not acceptable. That's not an acceptable solution, Dusty. That is basically what amounts to shunning. That's social shunning. And I don't accept it. I've been through that. That is actually extremist behavior. Excommunicating somebody for something that they believe or something. That is bigotry. Hating somebody for an opinion that they hold, that is bigotry. That's actually the definition of bigotry. Intolerance toward those who hold different opinions from oneself. It's not okay when others do it. It's not okay when we do it. Do not shun people socially for a belief that they hold. You need to work with them, talk to them, befriend them, see if maybe you can move them over on the issue. Do not shun them. So that's one extremist thing that I see from the quote-unquote SJW camp, is social disconnection over beliefs. That's an extremist practice. He's saying a lot of things that actually I do agree with. Like, if you take a look at... I don't agree with this one. So if soy face is a meme, I suggest punch face becomes a meme. I'm not saying you should punch people who make this face. I'm just saying you should want to. That's borderline encouraging violence. I just do not believe in it. I mean, it's not outright inciting violence. It's just encouraging it. Shouldn't have said it, in my opinion. See, guilt by association is a term used by assholes in order to excuse their friendships with shitheads. That's interesting. That there's a lot to unpack there. I just do not even have the time to, but there is something to that. It's kind of interesting. So Steve Shives is growing on me. People keep comparing me to him, and I'm starting to think it's not that much of an insult. Other than the blocking, what are the reasons people hate on him so bad? Are they just smearing him like they did me, or is there something legit? I think that Steve Shives was... He advocated for that whole social shunning thing, which is a big problem for me. I do not agree with that at all. Fundamentally, I think that's wrong. So that's one thing. Of course, I don't care about the blocking thing. If you want to block, then go nuts. I mean, it's your thing. If you want to delete Twitter completely, I'm not going to criticize you for it. Just delete it. Who cares? Delete it, and if you choose not to, make it private if you want. If you choose not to do that, block whoever the hell you want. Does not matter to me who you choose to block. I don't see why everybody gets all up in arms about that either, honestly. I've never blocked anyone in my life, but I think it's silly to get upset about it. Another reason I think that they get upset about him is he was in favor of deplatforming a lot of people, and he called a lot of people sexist who weren't sexist and racist who weren't racist. It's kind of a black and white thinking type of thing going on with him. Like I said, I have no issue with the guy, honestly. I don't hate anybody for their beliefs, period. I have sympathy for people who have outrageous, terrible, horrific beliefs. I would like to see them moved over on the issue. I don't hate anybody for anything. That's the thing. That's what separates me from SJWs and anti-SJWs, really, is I'm willing to befriend anybody, talk it through with them, and see if maybe we can move them closer to rationality. I'm not going to shun anybody over anything, basically. You can't socially shun people. That's not a good, productive way to do things. That's not helpful. That's extremist behavior. You need to talk things through with people. Potato, you don't have a couple of questions for me, do you?
Yeah, we've got a couple.
Sweet.
So first up from Emily. She was asking, have you ever been lectured or ridiculed due to something like your 666 tattoo?
My 666 tattoo is kind of obscure enough that, like, if you look at it and you don't know that it's a 666 tattoo, you can't really tell just right off the bat. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll just put up a picture of it on the podcast real quick. So for those of you watching, you can see this is what my tattoo is based off of right here. Was this? It was an album by Deicide is what it's called. It's a band. So anyway, just looking at it, you can't really tell that it's a 666 unless somebody knows what it is. But no, not really. Never been ridiculed or attacked for it or anything. people have kind of cringed and they've been like, wow, man, I can't believe you were that daring. Like, what if God's real and you just put the mark of the beast on yourself? And I'm like, what if Allah's real? Then we're all fucked, aren't we? So I don't know. I just don't buy the whole Pascal's wager thing. Do you have another question for me?
For sure. The Unconceivable Glue Man asked, do you condemn the use of the term gay to describe things as bad if they make a distinction between gay and homosexual?
Am I okay with people using the word gay as a pejorative? Is that what the question was?
Yeah, essentially.
I don't personally use it as a pejorative because to me it's not. It's just a description of a person. Like, if they're gay, then they're gay, and if they're not, then they're not. Am I going to crucify and no longer be friends with somebody for using it? No. My best friend says that all the time. I mean, I just kind of ignore it. I feel like it's a little bit extremist behavior to freak out on somebody over their language, unless it's so completely over the top, like they're getting in somebody's face and saying some really, really wrong things. Then I don't really... I think it's black and white. Like, there's no gray area here if you're really freaking out about every word that every person says. So, yeah, I don't use it that way. I'm not going to freak out if somebody else does. Did you have one more?
Sure. From PJ. PJ was asking, do you consider Judaism a cult?
There are a lot of different... It's like Christianity. Christianity is kind of a broad name. It's more of like a category of groups than it is a group itself, right? And as a result, I can't call Christianity a cult. It's too broad of a name. It's too broad of a title to call. I can call Jehovah's Witnesses a cult. I can call Mormonism a cult. I can call Heaven's Gate cults. Those are all Christian groups. And it's the same with Judaism. It's too broad of a name. Now, just standard, run-of-the-mill, typical, your synagogue down the street Judaism. No, it's not a cult at all. Like, not even a little bit. It's super chill. You know, a lot of the time they're atheists in some of these synagogues. Like, I had a really good friend I worked with who's Jewish, and he's an atheist. He's just culturally Jewish, I guess. He even goes to synagogue and does all the stuff. You know, does Hanukkah and the whole 9 yards. Super chill dude. Nothing cult-like about him or his behavior or any of that. There are, however, some Jewish cults that do exist. I heard that there's one in New York. Actually, my Jewish buddy that I worked with, he suggested a Jewish cult that's in New York that he wanted me to cover. I don't remember the name of it now. There are also a lot of Jewish cults in Israel, apparently. They're like compounds and stuff. They live on compounds. It's a lot like the U.S. is with Christianity in some areas of Israel, apparently, where it's like super extreme. But yeah, Judaism's super chill in my experience. I mean, most Judaism. But I would be willing to say that every category of religion has some cult in it. Buddhism, there are Buddhist cults. There are Hindu cults. There are Islamic cults. There are Christian cults, Jewish cults. There are cults all over the place. But you have to drill down and get down to the group level. You can't call an entire category a cult. It just does not make any sense most of the time. So anyway, first guest on the list is Omega Riley. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hey, let me ask you, how many times is it? I think you've been on the podcast probably like 6 times or something, haven't you?
I think today is my 3rd, though I did call in when you're on someone else's show once.
Oh man, yeah. I thought it was more than that. That's
awesome. We just end up talking a lot.
Right? Apparently so. That's pretty cool. Well, thank you for coming back on.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're a patron, and that's why you get kicked to the top of the list, I guess, right?
Yeah, I always forget that.
Yeah, that's cool. So anyway, just to recap for the audience, you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, right?
Yeah, ex-Jehovah's Witness went to my last meeting in 2015.
Really? Your last meeting in 2015? Was that like, were you still kind of going regularly, or was it kind of sporadic by the time you went to your last one?
It wasn't my choice. I had really entirely emotionally fallen out of everything by about 2013, probably. But my mom still forced me to go to everything through 2014, and then in 2015 was my last convention.
Right, interesting. I actually heard that somebody I work with is a Jehovah's Witness, and he messaged me yesterday, and he was like, "Hey, I'm at a Jehovah's Witness convention." He doesn't know anything about me or what I do outside
Right.
of the software stuff I do for him. It's so funny. It's like, "Oh, that sounds like fun." But anyways,
Like fun. Ugh.
yeah, like
Should we
fun.
give some context as to what the convention is for everyone
Yeah,
who
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
aware?
What was it like when you went to the last convention? Like, what did you do? Tell me about it.
I mean, the last one I went to, I believe it was the one that they held in the Kingdom over in Seattle.
Mm.
And I think it was like an 11,000 person turnout, something like
That's
that.
huge.
Oh, it was incredible. They normally, over here, they host them in the Tacoma Dome, and we get normally like 3,000 people. And then they have couple of weeks that they do it.
That is nuts. Yeah, I think that, like, I don't want to out myself where I live, but people know I live in West Virginia. So I'll just say that I had conventions at various times in Columbus, Ohio, and in the capital of West Virginia, Charleston. At points in my life, I think we got like 3,000, 4,000 at the district convention, which is the 3-day convention, the big one every year. But I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for a while. We got 10,000 at that one. It was so crazy. Let me ask you this. When you were going to the conventions, when you were little, did you have the vendors outside selling like little fans and binoculars and stuff?
Maybe. I'd never actually put it together, but I noticed that everyone there had like a little like paper fan or something, one of those little tiny motor things
Yeah.
going. So maybe they were selling them nearby. It was that, or they just went and picked them up at the dollar store. I know we did that once or twice.
Oh man, I remember like I lived in Connecticut for a while, and we had our district conventions when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old in Rhode Island, and there was like this giant American flag hanging from the ceiling of this convention center, and they could not take it down. They couldn't remove it, and it was the only convention center that would fit everybody in that area, so they had no choice but to hold it there. It was crazy.
That's funny.
Yeah, I could not even believe it. It was like, such a scandal. But outside of that convention, they had vendors that were selling little motorized fans and binoculars. And it was like going on vacation almost. Like we'd get a hotel, and there'd be like a swimming pool there. We'd get the hotel for like 3 days, and we'd have these little fans. It was actually fun. Like I honestly kind of enjoyed going to the conventions at the time. I didn't like sitting there through the boring sermons all day, but it was kind of an entertaining trip,
Oh, I totally understand that. I know it was one of the few times I got to see my extended family because, oh my God, my entire family tree is hitting it, and now I just don't talk to anyone.
Really?
But,
Are they all Jehovah's Witness?
all of my mom's side, yeah. Pretty much everyone I can immediately think of was. I have like a couple of aunts and uncles who didn't buy into it, but other than that, all my grandfather's uncles on his side, and then my grandmother on my mom's side.
What about your dad? Is your dad and his side not? Or?
Yeah, my dad, his parents are in it, but I don't believe that he currently is. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I have a lot of stuff going on with him that I won't get into on this.
I hear you. Yeah, I understand actually. But
all I can say on that is I totally identify with how I know you talked about your father in a couple of episodes.
Kind of sucks. So, but yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. Somebody's actually asking, like, is it like Comic-Con convention or something else? Let me just tell you, it's kind of like you rent out a big arena, and there's like big seating and everything else just all over the place, right? And you go into the arena, and it's just all Jehovah's Witnesses everywhere. It's organized by Jehovah's Witnesses. They will buy out the vendor locations inside the building, or they did at mine anyways, because they don't want vendors in there that are not Jehovah's Witnesses. And so that makes it even more expensive. You got name tags that everybody wears. It says Jehovah's Witness, put your name on there and everything else. And you basically sit there. They have a schedule, a program, and they have a 1-day convention, a 2-day convention, and a 3-day convention. I think it's for like the circuit and the district and the tri-state area or something like that. I don't even remember now, but
I think the conventions are tri-state, and then there were the assemblies that are the circuit.
Right. So anyways, they have like single day, 2-day, and 3-day, and they have schedules. And this is when people get baptized. So they'll have like hour-long sermons from various people, and then they'll take a break, and then they'll do another sermon, and they'll do they'll do the baptisms, and they'll have a drama on one of the days where they act things out, or they used to do that. I understand now they just play video clips or something, but
yeah.
It's boring as shit for the most part, like sitting there, like falling asleep in your freaking hands because it's like hours and hours of just droning on. But, you still get to see, like you said, your extended family. You get to see your friends, and you get to eat lunch there with like your packed lunch and everything. It's just like kind of fun in its own little weird way, I guess.
I don't know. It's like a nice kind of get together. The issue is you just got to sit through 8 hours plus of religious ranting all day.
Yep. And
it was always in summer, and with 11,000 people in one area. Oh my dear Lord, that got so horribly hot.
Yep. That's why they sold like the fans and stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
I remember crafting little paper fans out of my notebook paper and stuff. God.
Oh, I'm sure everyone did that.
Yeah. And at a certain age, you were expected to take notes. I don't know if you did this too, but I would sit there and take notes. Like I actually learned special ways of taking notes with like shorthand writing and stuff because I was writing so quickly to keep up with them and stuff. But
oh yeah.
Did you ever?
Yeah. I never took good notes.
Really? Oh my God. A friend of mine and I actually, we sat up in like the top section, like way up in the nosebleed section, and we watched Family Guy on his PSP, like one of the very last conventions I was at. And some people saw us and just lost it. They were like, "What are you doing? I know you're not spiritually strong, but you got to get it together," and all that.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's good times.
Yeah, I remember I got a talking to because one time I was talking with my cousin how we were talking about an episode of South Park.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's
a big deal.
Yeah, not a good one.
I never did watch it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I got talking to him. It's like I mentioned it to someone I worked with, and then they said they wouldn't even watch a show. This is someone of the world telling me that they wouldn't do that. I was like, oh, jeez.
God, that's so bad. I remember at one point I sat down like on the floor. Like they had the seats all around like an arena does, but then they have the seats on the floor for like the handicap section. And I would sit down there with the sign language people and learn sign language. Like somebody would sign the entire thing to people, and so that, I didn't learn Spanish, but I did learn sign language. Yeah, this is kind of one useful skill I got, but
yeah.
Did you ever like learn Spanish or any of that?
No, I took like a couple of weeks of Italian. I managed to glean one whole sentence that I can still speak.
Oh, you're a bad Jehovah's Witness. I can't believe you. Shame on you.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty interesting. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me again. Maybe we'll see you another time, okay?
Yeah, man, I always appreciate you having me. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, good times. I don't know. Like, the conventions were entertaining in their own way, or parts of it was entertaining, or were entertaining. But, yeah, it was still, like, super just dry and boring sitting through that stuff. But, I don't know. Part of me kind of misses it. So, anyways, next person on the list is Adjimicos 4064. Hey. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I can indeed. How's it going?
Okay, I was muting myself. I was trying to get into the settings.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So, Yeah, what's going on? Like, I've seen you around a little bit, but you've never been on the podcast, right?
No, I have not.
What religion were you originally? Are you still religious, or?
So I was baptized Methodist,
Okay.
but when I went to first going to church, went to a Church of Nazarene when I was like 5 years old. I don't
Really?
even know what their whole thing is. They were just very strict. But
Yeah.
I think the only thing I know is like I've heard that there's a thing about not they were like they don't dance and
I've actually heard of them too. In fact, I think I did a video on them
but then
forever ago. Mhm.
yeah, and then I don't even follow any of that. And then of course then it went to Pentecostal when I with my mother
Mm.
and then when I was 12 years old, and that was weird.
You went Pentecostal,
And
you
then
say?
yes, and then when I went to school in the well, I had a very jump around. I even went to stepped into a church of I was Catholic in the Philippines when I was 14.
Really? Okay. You were
Yeah.
Catholic for how long? Not
No,
very
no,
long, I guess.
no. I just went to church
Oh, okay. I see.
went to a Catholic church.
Right, got you.
That's it.
Interesting. Was that the last church that you ended up going to, or did you go to more after that?
So the last church I've gone to was a Methodist church when I
Okay.
was in high school.
Okay. Is that where you got
And that was
baptized?
yes.
Interesting. Do you still believe it?
No.
Okay.
I'm
So you're an
agnostic
atheist.
now,
Okay.
and I'm just like I don't know.
Yeah.
Just prefer to say as, you know, I kind of try to live a humble life and say it's better to just say I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I'm with you. That's really interesting. So, do you have like memories of any kind of like tell me about growing up in a religious environment. Like what was it that kind of got you to go to Pentecostal and then Catholic and then eventually
So
Methodist?
when I was in the Church of Nazarene,
Mm,
everything was neither of my parents were very strict about the religion,
mm.
and I was kind of like I just went to church on Sunday and I just memorized Bible verses, and everything was fine. And then my mother went to the started going to the Pentecostal church, and she started slamming it down me and telling me that if I wasn't doing it, I was going to go to hell.
Mm.
And so that started being like, at the church, she started taking my free will away from actually going to it. And then
Yeah.
it just started pushing me away from it. And then it started just questioning, like, the whole system on, like, it's all that so it came down to when I was in the Philippines, I started seeing effects of, like, just poverty over there and knowing that how much money it's sent by our United States government,
Mm-hmm.
how it doesn't help anyone, and there's just political despots that have been there since the country's founding.
Right.
And so I started questioning all of that on the whole system of just how religion and government's all just based on controlling everyone.
Yep.
And so it's
Just kind of opened up from there. Like you just kind of started to realize it from that point, I guess.
that all of religion, all religion is just based on control,
Yep.
controlling the populace.
Yeah.
And
I've definitely seen a lot of that too. Actually, I've talked about Methodists and I've talked about them as being reasonably moderate. It's interesting that
yes,
you ended up
they
like
were very moderate.
I,
Yes, and that's another thing is they were moderate, and they like most of them went like in that area though became more moderate.
Mm.
They used to be very strict, like but they're like had a bell choir still, but the actual members of them were very moderate.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual service was very like, I guess conservative, but
the people weren't as much.
Yes.
Right, that
Yes.
makes sense. I'm wondering what it was that kind of got you to kind of walk away from it for the most part.
It was just more of everyone was just, pushing it on me.
Mm.
saying that if I wasn't gonna do it, that it's just the whole system of control. Just you know that was that God him. They say that God gave us free will, and of course all of the systems are just trying to control everyone,
Yeah.
and they want and it's like even why does God need money if he's omnipotent?
Right?
Why does God need anything? If he's omnipotent, and if God's omnipotent, our human like he created our minds, and if he's omnipotent, we wouldn't even be able to comprehend the fact he exists.
Right.
And people, it's just like everything contradicts itself.
It does, yeah. Actually, I don't know if you've seen this before. Have you ever heard of like I think it's called the Skeptic's Annotated Bible? Does that sound familiar?
I've heard of it.
It's pretty cool, actually. I think I talked about this last podcast too, but there's like this website called bibviz.com, and it's got like lines drawn between the verses of the Bible, like for every contradiction in the Bible. It's got like thousands and thousands.
Oh, yes.
It's insane.
My girlfriend was telling me about. I was talking about that website earlier.
Yeah, it's super
today,
awesome.
And sent it to someone because they sent her something on Facebook, and it was like a live stream of some service that was going on today.
Okay. Friggin' religious BS. That's pretty funny though. That's awesome. Your girlfriend is who's your girlfriend again?
29.
Awesome. Yes, 29. Yeah, 29's been around for like a long time. I think she's been here on the server since like
She said like over a year.
Yeah, over a year. I think it's like February of last year or something like that. She's drawn me a lot of artwork. It's been pretty awesome, so I appreciate her coming on. And I'm glad you're here too. That's pretty cool too. So anyway.
Yeah, so we're both from Alaska, so.
How is it there?
Today it's sunny. Yesterday it was pouring rain where I'm at.
Right. Let me ask you this. In the area that you are in, does it like stay light outside for longer than usual? Or is that one of the areas in Alaska? Or
Yes. Well, that's majority of the state when summer comes. Summer comes around.
How do you deal with that? So it's like
blackout. You buy blackout curtains for your windows.
What is
for your bedrooms?
I assume that means that during the winter it's dark most of the time, right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with the darkness?
Have bright lights. And
is it hard? Like, do you ever have a problem with like just being in the dark all the time, like not seeing the sun or anything?
I play a lot of video games during the winter.
Right. That keeps your mind occupied, I guess.
And then during the summer, I just get a super excess of sun and outdoors. Just because there's so much of it that there's sun's up all the time.
Yeah, I know that. I don't know. Like there have been times in the winter here where it's like dark. It gets dark at like 4 or 5 p.m.
Oh no,
or something like that.
That's what it's saying. It's winters are hard.
Yeah, for sure. I can't even imagine going through something like that. Like, I would freak out. I guess I'd have to have like lamps on all the time and stuff. It would pretty.
Say I sleep a lot through the winter. Hibernate.
Yeah, almost. There you go. That's actually probably the best way to do it, I imagine. To try that out. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. It's been an interesting conversation, and I'm sure I'll see you around the server. Okay.
Yep. Talk to you later.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I've had a lot of issues with like, sometimes I stay up until 4 a.m. working. I really get most of my work done at night. Like I usually start work around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I just work straight through until I'm done. Sometimes I finish at 10 p.m., sometimes it's 2 a.m., sometimes it's 4 a.m. And if that's the case, usually Kylie will get me up in like on the weekend in the morning at like 10:30. She'll wake me up, and she's like 10 now. She just does her own thing pretty much. And so from 10:30 until like 4:30 is the only sunlight I get, and it just kind of drives me insane sometimes. It's really hard to deal with. But anyway, so then the very last person I wanted to get tonight was TJ Merlot. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Me?
Yes, I can. How's it going?
Not too bad.
So we have talked before, haven't we?
Yeah, there was one time I was lurking on the server and you happened to be on, so I waited for you to pop on I waited for a bit and then we got to talking.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So just, of course, for the audience, because they don't know the information, but what religion were you originally?
You, ex-Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, yeah.
I've been out for, I used to remember the day that I got officially disassociated in November 2017.
Okay, so tell me about, like, what was the thing that got you disassociated or that made you realize that? Because you said disassociated, not disfellowshipped, right? So they didn't kick you out, you left.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I realized that it was bullshit, but it was, it was one thing to mentally detach myself from it, but it was another thing to what was, how I was feeling, because you know how it is. If the moment you speak up against them, you're out.
Yeah, I definitely know exactly what you mean. So is that what ended up happening with you? Was you kind of spoke out against it and they didn't like that, or?
I confided in someone who I thought I could trust. She blabbed to her parents, who blabbed to my mother, and when my mum, she called me, and when she rang me, I was done running. I just, you can only live a life for so long, mate. At some point, you keep running, and then one day you just get tired, you run out of breath. So I thought, enough's enough.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's the thing about this religion, is that they chase you down sometimes. Like, they send elders after you to figure out what you're doing. They'll go knocking on your door to ask questions and stuff. It's like almost creepy, but you put it succinctly, like, you're almost running is what it is. And at a certain point, you just don't want to hide that anymore. I can totally get on board with that. I definitely know what you mean. So
eventually you just give up. I mean, and it was pretty bad for me because at the time, being a young single male in his 20s, I was a prime candidate. I knew one of the elders approached me and said, "Hey, we've been thinking about promoting you to be a ministerial servant," and that I knew that this train wreck was going to happen at some point. I knew this was inevitable.
Right. So they were trying to make you a ministerial servant, huh? And you didn't believe it at the time?
Fuck no, I didn't. I was mentally, I was well and truly out of the religion by that point, but I was still physically in. And I remember thinking, because when you live a lie, you do wind up thinking, where the fuck does this end? Like, how far am I going to let this go before you just come clean? Before it all falls apart.
Yeah.
How could I have let this go on? I mean, was I going to wait till I got promoted there? Was I going to elder, marriage with children? Where does it end?
Yeah. That is such a clear glimpse into the mindset. Like, that's so fascinating. So, like, what was the thing that kind of got you to leave? What was the thing that made you realize it was BS?
Oh, I'm always a bit like, even as a kid, I always had an interest in like science and history, and I noticed there were inconsistencies with with a lot of their publications, particularly the Creation book, and with what actual science and what historians would actually say on various matters and what have you. And because you know how it is, we were both conditioned to that out and to just trust in the governing body and the organization. But eventually I thought, well, if they really are right, the facts should be on my side.
Right.
Turns out they, as you knew well and truly before me, you found out that that's not the case.
Right.
Have to be protected, mate. You know, the truth is, well, that's just it. The truth is always going to be found out in one way.
Yes. That's super fascinating, man. I actually have a copy of their old blue book. What's it called? How Did Life Get Here by Evolution or Creation or something like that. Do you remember that book?
Fuck me dead. Do I remember that
Yeah.
book? That was a grueling read.
Yes, it was. I actually bought a copy of it on Amazon to add to my collection of books just because, it's that book. Richard Dawkins actually debunked that in in the God Delusion, in his book, The God Delusion.
Well, what was funny was because he was misquoted. I think it was your video actually that pointed out that misquotation.
Yep.
But I even remember reading through that thinking, hang on, whoever wrote this book, they've gone through Richard Dawkins' book. They've gone through the Origin of Species. If they can go through it and still come out as, believing in Jehovah, why can't I?
Right.
So, yeah, exactly. So I thought I had nothing to lose. So I thought.
It's really genuinely fascinating to me that they actually have people who wrote that book. I mean, I read through it, and it's almost like it seems like they knew what they were talking about, but they were like twisting it around to be something completely different. Like they totally misquoted people. So obviously they read the quotes that these people said in the first place and twisted it around. How do you read these people's books and get these quotes in the first place and still make it out a Jehovah's Witness? It genuinely blows my mind,
I think they came at it from a biased angle, because I think you and I, we genuinely had a search. We genuinely wanted to search for the truth.
Yeah.
So I think they came at it thinking, instead of thinking, how can I learn something? They thought, how can I continue to prove that? I mean, you've got to, especially when you're in such a high level like they would be.
Yeah.
So that's the only explanation I could have.
That's pretty true. By the way, on another note, you don't watch Lloyd Evans' channel, do you? Did you hear about the whole Bottlegate situation?
Yeah, the thing was, I'm pretty sure that was released on April 1st, and I remember thinking, "Fuck off, this is going to be a joke." But nope, that's him. And the best thing was, it was of all people to happen to, it was the most pretentious fucking righteous member of that group. I was just, I haven't laughed so hard in a long time. That was,
I know, it was awesome.
Funny.
Yeah. For people who don't know, basically a member of the governing body, Tony Morris, the biggest sack of shit on the governing body, in my opinion, was found in a liquor store buying like $850 worth of like top shelf liquor or something like that.
It was top shelf. It was top shelf whiskey, and he was busted loading that into his Cadillac. But what was even funnier was that the liquor store that he was buying from, that was a good 20 odd minutes away from their
headquarters.
Warwick headquarters. Yeah. It was. So he went, and this was at 11 in the morning on a Sunday. So he went. That's a pretty long drive at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. I mean, especially for a high and mighty governing body member.
And he was I imagine he was supposed to be in a meeting. Like, I know my meetings were always 10 a.m. to noon on Sunday. I'm surprised. Maybe he did it during the meeting times on purpose so he wouldn't be spotted by a Jehovah's Witness or something. I don't know.
Well, that is one very plausible idea. Having said that, though, unlucky for him that someone who happened to be an ex-Jehovah's Witness spotted him and filmed him. I mean,
I know.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the only problem with those guys, is that they are in a celebrity status. They are recognized, and especially Tony, he's recognized by his face and by his voice. He's got a very distinctive voice about him, so he can't hide from something. Like, if I showed that to a Jehovah's Witness, assuming they'd bother to watch, they wouldn't be able to deny it.
Right? I mean, it's just right out there. Yeah.
It is blatantly there for everyone to see. And even if we were to ridiculously assume that he was buying liquor for several other people and not just himself, is that a really good look for, what is meant to be?
It's so bad.
Well, here's the thing. And for those of you who don't know, the governing body, they're more than just someone higher up. We are meant to look at them as angels walking on earth.
Yeah. Because that's kind of what they are. They're one of the 144,000, and they are passing, I mean, they're prophets, basically. They're passing instructions down from Jehovah to us, right?
That's how it's perceived. It's meant to be like this spiritual trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
And we're meant to get it all from these guys. Mr. Don't wear tie pants and all, and don't spend 50 cents on an ice cream because I need it for my liquor fund.
Right? Man. Like, I think the thing that gets me the most about Tony Morris is the fact that he wasn't a Jehovah's Witness from the start. He joined later, but he was in Vietnam, like a medic in the Vietnam War, and he talks about, in some of his talks, like seeing humans like burning. Like, he said something like, they look like, have you ever been cooking a hot dog on a grill and it splits open? Well, that's what it's going to be like in Armageddon for people. Have you ever seen a deer mangled on the side of the road? You think that's disturbing? Just wait until you see humans like that. I was like, holy shit, this dude. I cannot believe he's saying this in front of like all of these people. It's mind-blowing. But
to be fair, he was probably a little bit. Anyone that went to Vietnam, medic or soldier, came back a little bit fucked up.
Oh, they did. They totally did. Yeah. It's still like, this is the kind of headspace this guy is in, though. It's like disturbing.
Yeah, and the way he talks about it, it's almost like he is just itching for, as Christopher Hitchens referred to it, as the ultimate final solution. Because that's what it is. That's what Armageddon is, and they can't wait for it. They are just so keen to see all of these people, all these quote-unquote wicked people getting slaughtered in the masses.
Yeah, in fact, they're the ones that are going to do it, like the governing body members, because they're anointed. So anointed people are supposed to be raptured to heaven, given a sword, and then sent on their way to start murdering people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. So they're kind of excited for that almost,
How's this for a disturbing thought? Imagine if it does happen and the one that happens to kill you is Stephen Lett, and he has that massive grin on his face that he always has.
What a creep, man.
That'd be a horrifying thing to look at just before you die.
Well, it's like, I don't know if you've seen, I was just looking at like Lloyd Evans' Teespring the other day, and he has a shirt that says Young Wands, because that's kind of Stephen Lett's thing, he says Young Wan. It's really funny. Like, he's got some clever shirts, man. I'm kind of jealous I didn't come up with that stuff. But
Oh, hang on. There was one that I saw ages ago. Well, not a shirt, but like there was a quote that Garrett Loach said. He said in a deposition about him that the watchtower doesn't control me or any shit like that. It was something like that. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have seen that. It was something like...
There's an idea for a print.
Yeah, that is a good idea. He said I should probably write that down. I think he said something like, they split Watchtower Society and Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses into two different groups, and then they put like in with the Watchtower Society, and then the governing body members basically disconnected themselves from the Watchtower Society so that they couldn't be compelled to turn records over. And the court just saw straight through it when he said, the Watchtower Society doesn't control me and all of that. They saw straight through it, and they were like, I'm sorry, we're court ordering you to come anyways. I don't give a shit. It's pretty funny.
You could use that as a print because, in that context for us, it's, we're not controlled in another way.
Right.
Although I found it funny, in one broadcast, Garrett Loach did say, to be wary of what's on the internet, it might be a misquotation and shit like that. But it's like, well, okay, even with that in mind, how can you sit there and say that with a straight face, given that the creation book has been not only debunked, but shown where you guys have been quote mining
Yep.
at a ridiculous scale?
Yes.
I mean, the lack of self-awareness on that guy, it just pisses me off.
I know, me too. I would seriously, I don't know. I just love doing videos on Jehovah's Witnesses. It's like one of my favorite subjects, but I feel like I've been focusing in on them too much, so I'm trying to kind of go to other subjects, but that's always going to be my base, Jehovah's Witness videos, you know? Gotta love that stuff.
It's what we know best, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We grew up with that. We know at firsthand how scarring it all is, you know, and we also know the nitty gritty too, you know, the day-to-day life of and the very process that's involved in being, you know, kicked out of the organization and the shunning that comes from it.
Yep.
So,
and it's something that you can't really get, like, I was never a Mormon, and as a result, I don't really get Mormon culture like I do Jehovah's Witness culture, you know?
Well, I mean, that's like my therapist, for instance, he's from Iran, and he doesn't understand Jehovah's Witnesses because he never was one and didn't have so much to do with them, but in his country, he grew up with predominantly Muslims. So that's the thing that he's more familiar with. He's been helpful towards me, but that's, you know, it's basically you're more of an expert in what you grew up with. So you know, that can't be helped. So don't worry about.
Right? Yeah, that's always my base. I'll always go back to that. But anyway, we are 10 minutes over. I appreciate you talking to me. It's been super interesting. I'm sure I'll talk to you around, though, okay?
Oh, I'll speak to you again sometime, mate.
Yep, later on. It's a super interesting conversation. It's kind of a shame that I had to bring it to an end, but I gotta get some work done. It's really cool talking to another ex-Jehovah's Witness, though. It's been cool talking to all of you guys. But anyway, appreciate you guys coming on and talking to me once again, and I will see you next week. No, wait a minute. Wait. No, I'm not going to see you next week. I'm going to be at a conference next week. I will see you possibly on that Wednesday. I don't know. I'll keep you guys updated. Talk to you soon.